think differently and approach your attitude towards classical music. I'm trying to change that approach. So we can begin. Yeah.
Thank you, Mom. So I was just waiting for your cue.
Yes,
I was
sorry. I got engrossed.
I couldn't introduce our very brilliant speaker, Srimati Nithya Rajendran. She's a classical vocalist with over 3 decades of experience in both Carnatic and Hindustani Shastriya Sangeet. Her deep passion for music has now expanded from performing to educating, and also to exploring the therapeutic and spiritual potential of Indian classical music. A voice that's captivated audiences worldwide. Please put your hands together for Srimati Nithya Rajendran.
Thank you, Nithya. That was a very flowery introduction. Everybody likes to hear stuff like that, but we're all doing modest and humble work, and our work never really ends. Anyway, I'm going to take you back a few decades, when I was just about maybe 10 or 12 years old. And this was a walk from my home to my bus stop, from where I have to take my bus to school. And it's a very important day, because there was an exam. Of course, it's important. It is even more important because I don't prepare for exams. So I used to be always last minute, sort of let's rush through it and let's see what happens, and start doing my nails on the day of the exam. So that quintessential me was walking from home to the bus stop, full of nerves. A lot of butterflies in the stomach, I'm chewing my nails, I'm running, I'm like, what do I do? Let me just, maybe if I pace up, I can work off the anxiety. A lot of anxiety. Now, 3 remarkable things happened on the way to that bus stop. 3 remarkable things. The first thing that happened was, on the right side of the road, there was a little home with a beautiful little garden. And there was a bright bloom of flowers of different colors. Bright yellow, purple, pink, red, and in the middle of all that stress and tension, for a second, I just stopped and I was zapped by that sight. And I stopped and I said, this is just beautiful, It's so captivating. And the 100% का जो anxiety था, suddenly, 2 seconds, 3 seconds के लिए 0 हो गए. It became 0. Right? Because that is a moment where you're totally in the present and you're just captivated. Then I needed to watch, getting late. I need to keep moving. My anxiety came back, started chewing my nails again, butterflies in the stomach. But the anxiety was not 100%, it came back to 90%. Something had happened. I saw those flowers and something had happened. Okay. Carried on. Again, this topic is remaining, that topic is remaining. And then I'm walking. The second most remarkable thing happened. There was a dhaba on the side of the road, which was making masalas. And the smell of that dosa and the masala came to my nose, walked it through the air. And I took a deep breath, and it felt outstanding. It reminded me of home, of home food, of comfort, of all of those things. And again, for those few seconds, 0 anxiety, 0. Because it had filled my senses up and I was lost. But then again, my watch reminded me, I have only a few minutes to catch the bus. ठीक है चलो, भागो. My anxiety came back, not to 100, not to 90, came back to 80. I said, okay, 20% I'm feeling better, but 80% I still have to handle. Then came the most remarkable. From a tiny tea stall, towards the end of the road I was walking on, came a sound of a very familiar song. You all would have heard it. I can't sing the lyrics for reasons other. already learning music, I knew what rag it was. I'm assuming all of you know what rag is based on. And that rag came to my head. And I started singing, Bala Bala Jam, Bala Bala Jam, Garva Harva Dam, Garva Harva Dam, Bala Bala Jam. And that song kept going on and on and on in my head and in my voice. And my anxiety had dropped a few and came back to not 100%, not 90%, not 80%, not 60 or 50 or 40 or 50 or 20. It remains you. Right up to the point that I went into exam, it remains zero. Why? Because the song was going on in my head. And through the process of being exposed to that music that I was humming and the music that was in my head, I totally felt completely at peace. The jo hoga so hoga. Dekhenge. World is not going to come to an end. I've prepared as much as I can and let the marks be whatever it is. Complete sense of peace and complete sense of submission and totally comfortable with the situation. I don't remember what marks I got and I don't want to remember. So that's it from matter. But I was at peace. So this was the first tryst I had with the power of Indian classical music. I didn't know it at that time. I didn't know it till very late. But I'm remembering it now because it was one of the earliest memories I have of how a raga transformed the way I was feeling and thinking at that point in time. The second thing that happened, that I'm able to remember now, was about 10 years later. There were a lot of things that happened to me, but I'm going to narrate a few things that are profound in my memory. The second thing that happened was 10 years later. My first very big banner concert. It was under a very big cultural banner. I must have been about your age, 20, 21. It was very prestigious and 2-hour concert. I had to do, it was a pure Carnatic concert. So a lot of ragas had to be sung. जाके stage में बैठ गई. And from the corner of my eye where this gentleman is sitting, there was a middle-aged lady. Slightly frayed, old, a little diminutive, थोड़ा slouch कर रही थी और थोड़ी उदास थी, बहुत उदास थी आज. और ऐसा लग रहा था पूरा दुनिया का बोझ अपने कंधे पे उठा के लेके आ गई कॉन्सर्ट में. अकेली बैठ रही थी and she was sitting with sort of like a sorrowful. But I was what? Your age, right? There is no maturity to understand the profoundness of what a middle-aged lady might be going through, what that would mean for her. I saw it from the corner of my eye and started my concert. There were many rags I sang, and among those rags, there was one rag which is called Suba Padhuvarani, which is a Carnatic rag. The rough equivalent in Hindustani is Todi, but I'll sing, let's say, a Brahmaved of Todi, which is Lalit, which is something like this. The mood is very similar. Okay? Now, this is one of the many rags I performed. And I finished my concert. And as is usual, when I get off the stage, the audience comes to me and gives their comments, their feedback, their happiness, sadness. Ye acha laga, ye I know this song very well. You should have sung this rag, I didn't like this rag, blah blah. And then this lady was waiting for her turn. Last में खड़ी थी. This lady who I saw on my left was waiting for her turn. She came to me and she held my hand and she had cried because her cheeks were wet. I could see them. She held my hand. She said, मैं यहाँ आई थी with a lot of burden in my heart. Lot of burden, lot of difficulties in my family. There are problems I'm not able to solve because it's difficult to solve. I'm alone and I'm lonely and I'm I'm very sorrowful. And I came and sat, and this particular raga that I heard, which is Subhapadurali, which I sang as some rough equivalent now, made me feel like that heavy burden of sorrow, which was like a rock, melted and came out as tears. And now, she said the problems are not gone. I'm feeling like the problems aren't gone, but my attitude towards the problems are different now. I'm lighter. I feel I can handle it. This was the second most profound incident that happened with regard to the effect of classical music on a person. Again, I didn't realize it. At 20 something, 19 something, I guess you guys are a lot more mature at 20, 19, when I see youngsters today, they're a different category only. But yeah, we were all quite innocent and little dumb, if I can say. I came away feeling very proud. Like, oh, मेरे वजह से किसी ने रोया, and I made somebody cry, and I was feeling very. It's a teenage, early youth ego that gets kicked off at that time. Fast forward another 10 years, 10, 12 years. Okay? Under my academy, I'm teaching a couple of students. One student comes in with her mother. Okay? The mother says, okay, ma'am, please take her class. I have a splitting headache. 3 days I have not been at peace. I've had every medicine as I can. मेरा migraine चालू हो गया, medicine कुछ नहीं गया. I said, okay, no problem. So we started the class and Rag Mia Malhar चल रहा था. And Mia Malhar goes something like this. You all must be familiar with the old film song in this, which I can't, I'm not going to give you the words. Na 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 na. Must have heard this song, right? How many of you have heard this? Finished this raga, and the mother beams after the class. She said, "Ma'am, my headache is gone." I said, "Congratulations, your medicine has worked." She said, "No, my medicine hasn't worked. This raga, whatever was being taught, and my child was also singing it and hearing her repeat it, and the way we move of the raga, the headache is vanished." So these are real incidents that have happened, real incidents. And they've happened in front of my eyes, and they've happened because of the power of Indian classical music. Okay? One last incident I wanted to talk about before I go to the next section, which is, this was the concert in 2019. Okay, I was sitting in front of the audience singing. The audience was a learned audience, in the sense they knew about ragas, they knew about Aroga. Again, from the corner of my eye, the person who was manning the security gate, one of the security guards was standing on the side. So, a lot of ragas were being sung. Among those was Sarang. Sarang, how many of you know Vrindavan Sarang? Heard Vrindavan Sarang? Yeah. Bana bana dhoodana jaun, sakhi bana bana dhoodana jaun, kitahun chup gaye Krishna Murari, kitahun chup gaye Krishna Murari, bana bana dhoodana jaun. And you all must be familiar with a very popular song, which was roughly based on this rag. It had other albums in it. Remember? Right? This was one of the ragas. And at the end of the concert, security said, Madam ji, आप कुछ तो गा रहे थे शास्त्रीय संगीत का मुझे मालूम नहीं है लेकिन ये राग was talking about sarang. He said जो घूमर वाला जो कुछ I had given a comparison between घूमर and sarang. घूमर goes into other rags also, a little bit of malhar and lake also happens, but initial opening is sarang. सो घूमर वाला जो राग था ना जो आपने, उसके बाद ना मुझे ऐसे लग रहा है नाचूं, अब मुझे नाचने को मन हो रहा है और मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है कि मजा आए। मुझे शास्त्रीय संगीत के बारे में कुछ मालूम नहीं, लेकिन मजा आए। दिस व्हाट ही सेड। Again, very profound, right? The person doesn't have any exposure to classical music, has had no background in learning it, doesn't know the name of ragas, but is impacted by the sound of raga. Let's put a pin on this section for some time and then let's go back in time to my first leanings towards classical music. I was about 5 years old, going back to the southern city of Chennai, and this time it was a really hot summer day. And those who have ever lived in Chennai know that power cuts are quite often. I don't know if it's still the case, but it used to be very often. And they would choose summer when it was 40 degrees to switch off the power. They had a statistic, I don't know what attitude towards all of us. They would switch off power when it's really hot. Anyway, it was evening time, so it wasn't that bad, but the power had gone. And typically what I used to do when the power used to go off as a little kid, my mother used to put me on her lap. Balcony mein there used to be a sofa. I used to sit, she used to sit, I used to sit on her lap, and she would just rock me, and she would keep singing me something. And this was when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So she was singing what we know as Rag Bhairavi in Hindustani. It is kind of a rough equivalent of Sindhu Bhairavi in Carnatic. It's actually playing now, so I'm going to let this go and विश्वेश्वर दर्शन करो चल मन तुम काशी विश्वेश्वर दर्शन करो चल मन तुम काशी. Right? And I started humming in my little voice. And she said, you know what? You're able to replicate what I'm singing. So let me get you started with some music classes. And then began my twist with music. I started learning. My school was also very encouraging of classical arts, especially of Carnatic music. And then I was sent for a lot of competitions and I did manage to do a fair bit with music. Went on to get accredited in the radio, went on to win some national level awards. Then around late teens, I commenced learning Hindustani music because I loved it. Went on to get certified in that also and got radio credited. So throughout, it's been a long journey with music. Now, when I look back, every memory that is associated with music for me, forget the fact that I'm taking it up as a profession, and the fact that I had a leaning towards it. Let's keep that aside. But every time, my memory around music is one of peace, one of happiness, one of joy, one of forgetting worries, one of suddenly anxiety going away, one of suddenly connecting with people. You know, suddenly गाना शुरू हो जाता है और 4 लोग आपके साथ गाते हैं, and suddenly there's a connection between those people, and that connection builds so much happiness in us. So my memories around music have always been very positive and very uplifting. Till around I think early 20s, of course, music was always uplifting, but around that time, I went through a pretty bad patch. And I think many of you may relate to this because it happens around late teens, early 20s. When anxiety hits you, sometimes depression can hit you, and phobias. You know, I developed certain very weird phobias, fear of going out, fear of meeting people, fear of open spaces, sitting on a wide stage like this was unthinkable. I would resort to eating food as a way to relieve my stress, because that was the only way that was giving me comfort. So very bad things. Of course, music was helping a lot. There was one other thing that started to help, which was very profound, and which is what this talk is about in connection with music, which was mindfulness and meditation. Okay? I got exposed to 2 different forms of meditation, transcendental and vipassana, but I started following some sort of personalized hybrid version of that meditation. It's been now many years and I've still been meditating in our way. And there are some very striking similarities between what classical music does and what mindfulness does. The first thing I noticed was in meditative practice, how many of you meditate? Right? Do you use your mind to go back to your breath whenever your thoughts go away? So breath is sort of like a center point, correct? It's like you go to some thought or memory, bring it back to the breath. Feeling angry, envious, bring it back to the breath. Feeling all palpitation, bring it back to the breath. Feeling hungry, tired, bring it back to the breath. Back to the breath, back to the breath. And in the process of bringing it back to the breath, you are strengthening the power of the centeredness that the breath has compared to the thoughts and the other worries that your mind is drawing you towards, correct? Coming back to the breath. Now this centering thing, if you see in classical music, ragas may center your climax point, sa mein रहती है. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni, sa, sa, re, ga, ma, ga, re, sa. So ragas में क्या होता है? जहाँ पर भी जाओ वापस आके सा में बैठ जाते हैं. रियाज सा में होता है. षड रियाज करते हैं. We and the drone of the tantra is always sa pa sa. Usually, in some cases it's more. So that's a fantastic analogy I found between classical music and meditation. There is a center point. There is a center point to which you keep coming back to. So if you were to look at emotions like anger or envy or memories or all of these things that disturb your mind as deviations from the center, or even happiness, happiness being excited is also not a peaceful state. It is an excited state, right? That is deviating from a center of feeling of calm and bliss, right? So if you look at the analogy between this and ragas में क्या होता है? All the ragas have sa, but each raga's mood is different. Okay, Bhairav, you're going somewhere else and coming and you're creating a early morning somber gravitas mood. Yaman, you're creating a joyful romantic mood. Kalavati, you're creating longing. In some other rag, you're creating some other, in a very bold rag, you're creating a sense of purpose and valor. There are some rags that are a curious mix of what your parents must have felt when they said bye to you, which is एक तरफ खुशी है, joy है, दूसरी तरफ दुख, and both are happening at the same time. How do you explain it? It's like colors, right? You have red, blue, green. It's not just three or four colors. When you mix them up, and hues, subtle hues, sounds are like that. But the fundamentals are the same. And when you spin the wheel, what happens? It becomes, when you spin the color wheel, it becomes what? White. Center point. So this was an amazing kind of connect I found between mindfulness and music. Among other connections, the other thing that I found was connection with people. See, when you have successfully meditated and when you have had meditative practice for a while, आपका जो ध्यान है अपने आप से थोड़ा, you become less dramatic with yourself. My anger, my upset, I'm feeling envious, it's me, this whole thing of me becomes a little muted because you're stepping away from it. You're saying, ठीक है, तुम हो, लेकिन मैं, which is the center or the more aware part, is watching you and not reacting. So, me becomes less, and then that same anger, envy, everything that you felt, when you see it in another person, you become more compassionate, you become more forgiving about it. You see yourself in that person, right? This is connectedness. What happens in music? When you sit for a concert, the singer is singing something, creating a certain mood for herself or himself while he or she is singing it, you're feeling the same thing. There's a connect. These are just some of the fantastic parallels I saw. And now when I take out the pin from that first section, it made sense to me. Why each of these people were being so impacted by classical music? Because there is a powerful connection with spirituality, with the pursuit of self, with the pursuit of bliss, rather than excitement and joy and anger and happiness. These are dramatic emotions. We are not looking at drama, right? Any spiritual guru will tell you, you're not looking at drama. Even excitement is drama. High. It's a high. That, while it's pleasurable, that's not the purpose. Bliss, centeredness, calm, that is the final purpose. And that was being achieved in so many ways through the connection with emotions in the rag and the center of the rag or the climax point, which is the sa. This was the profound realization. And I genuinely felt, and this is why I created Music Bridge, and the founder of Music Bridge, which is sort of like an initiative which is kind of, let's say, breaking this down, this philosophy down into classes, into talks like this, into workshops, so that people can access it in such an easy way, right? Sometimes sitting and meditating for 1 hour is very difficult, very difficult. But how difficult is it to hear Ram Bhairavi? How difficult is it to hear Ragyavan? Or even a Bollywood song based on that Rag? So easy, right? It's so pleasant. So it's an easy way to slip into a spiritual state. And we are sitting on a treasure chest. As Indians who have such a rich traditional culture, we are sitting on a big treasure chest. And why? Why are Indian ragas, why is Indian classical music so powerful? Because it comes from the sound of birds, animals. The origins are very organic. Now, if I take a very stressed out person and make him stand on a cliff where there's a fantastic sunrise and there's a beautiful rainbow, Niche dekho, the beautiful valley of flowers, what will happen to his stress? At least for a few minutes it will vanish. Correct? Correct? Why? Because you're in front of nature, creation, beauty. These are all stamps of God and divine on earth. Same thing is with classical music, with ragas. The sounds of the seven swars have come, believed to have come from the sound of creation. And the seven swars have come from different sounds of animals and birds. And from there came 12 notes of the Hindustani, the flats and sharps, and then the 16 notes of the Carnatic system. So much has evolved from there. So no wonder that if you hear something, no wonder the lady cried when she heard Lalit. Because mood to it was connecting with her, but it was also giving a promise of the spiritual stuff, the resolution point. So here I am today to just tell you that expose yourself to ragas, to Indian classical music. It's a great entry point, a great foot in the door for spirituality. You don't need to put spirituality on a pedestal, meditation on a pedestal and say, "Arey, that's not my cup of tea. I don't want to get so serious and boring. I want to enjoy life." It's not that. This is not in lieu of enjoyment. It will enhance your enjoyment. And that spiritual pursuit can be so easily done, so easily got into with just the use of Indian classical ragas. So Indian classical music can transform you spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. And I hope you go back and press that YouTube video of any rag and go back and tell your parents or your friends that you were transformed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nithya, for taking us on a musical journey from the depths of Bhairavi to the splash of Mia Malhar and the bubbliness of Vrindavan Sari. Thank you so much. And we'd like to express our appreciation and thanks to you. And so I request